Hello, my name is Catherine Corcoran, Head of Management Consulting here with RSM Ireland, and you're all very welcome to this webinar. And we're delighted to have the opportunity of introducing you to the RSM PeopleLog HR system, which has been developed and well tried and tested by our colleagues and their clients indeed in RSM UK. Essentially, the PeopleLog system allows central cloud-based storage of all employee documentation. It reduces admin by giving employees responsibility via self-service, and it includes absence and training administration modules, as well as being completely integrated with your payroll systems. It's an affordable, complete HR solution which can be implemented in 4 to 6 weeks for as little as €3,000 once-off cost, with monthly costs from as little as €4 per employee, and that's for organisations with at least 25 employees. So today is a live demo, which we expect to last for 30 minutes, and we've built in 15 minutes for questions. And throughout the course of the webinar, if you have any questions, you can insert them through the Q&A box, and we'll go through those at the end of the demonstration. So I'm delighted to introduce Steve Sweetlow, partner with RSM UK, who will be running the demo today. Steve has worked on the development of the system and is a keen advocate and driver of leading-edge HR and payroll processes. He's going to take us through everything today. So thank you very much for joining us, Steve, and I'll pass over to you now.
Thank you very much, Catherine.
To hearing about the system.
I'll just share my screen. And we will be logging in as 2 types of user today. We'll be using the admin, and we'll be using an employee screen. The admin screen will see everybody for all employees. The employee will clearly only see their own details and any associated calendars that they have access to. So I will log in as an admin user first. Everybody sees everybody's details. The admin user sees everybody's details. So when first presented to the system, the employees are stored on the left-hand side and the employee tree view, and an organisation can be up to 5 levels deep. There's division, region, location, department and team. And an organisation's employees will be grouped in as many or as few of those unit structures as you require. The unit structures can also be used to set additional permissions. So as I've explained, an admin user sees absolutely everything about every employee, and an employee only sees their own details. There can be an unlimited number of user profiles in between. So some examples might be managers having access to their own employees, but for a limited number of fields, maybe just emergency contact details, maybe appraisal details. More senior managers or directors or people with a regional responsibility or a unit responsibility may have more information available to them. Possibly finance users may only require the numbers and the reporting and the ability to get cost center information. So all of the setup and the options are available in the configuration and will all be discussed during implementation. So, opening up an example record, I will open up Katie Ling from Department 2. And we will just look at some of the pieces of information that can be stored against an employee. If you so wish, you can store employee photographs where we see a silhouette. And then the fields and the information is all stored in a series of tabs and sub-tabs. So in each tab, the first one we come to is personal. The types of information below the personal tab will be their personal details, their address, their emergency contact details, work permit, equality, dependents, as you can see on the menu bar, the sub-menu bar. The personal details that we see on the screen, I'll draw your attention to two types of field. The first field being the birth date, not particularly because it's the birth date, but the type of field is a date field. Anywhere where there's a date field within the system can be set to send email alerts. So this can be useful for notifying somebody within your organisation that an employee's birthday is upcoming. But more importantly, things like probation periods, work permit expiries, appraisal dates, certificate expiries, if you store things like who has first aid certificates or who your fire marshals are, or any industry specific training that employees must have, then you can be alerted to things that are about to run out. The other type of field is the drop-down field. Wherever you see the arrow suggest that this field contains a drop-down and effectively multiple choice. And the key to this type of field is the values contained within the drop-down are totally configurable to each client. So if you have, for example, 5 nationalities, you have 5 in your list. You don't need the hundreds and hundreds and constantly be scrolling through. One of the things Catherine mentioned is what we're keen to do all the time is incorporate efficient processes in here, and saving all of the clicks and the keystrokes and the seconds for each individual task all adds up to a more efficient people management solution. As we move through the tabs, the address brings us the concept of an effective date. Most tabs within the system have an effective date. So organisations that are managing their people with a combination of spreadsheets and filing cabinets, the difficulty with that, although it certainly serves a purpose, and having all the data on a spreadsheet is certainly better than not having it at all, but having it within a system does mean that you can, at any point in time, look back through the history. Using our buttons at the bottom here, we can see each address this individual has ever had. Not that looking at which address they've ever had is particularly useful, but it comes into its own when we look at things like a salary history or a contract history, or even the history around their appraisals or their development or their absence record. The other functional button that we see on the bottom menu bar is the Actions button, and possibly one of the most powerful single buttons within the system. Acts as two main areas. The first one, I'll show the second one first, the Attachments button is effectively your online filing cabinet. Anything that you store against this employee, from a copy of their contract to their interview notes to their CV to anything that you may have against the employee, you can store in this in the Attachments area. As I've already mentioned and Catherine has mentioned, this system is online, it's cloud-based. So as long as you have an internet connection and your login details, you don't have to have any infrastructure in your business to run this. You just need to be able to get to an internet connection and you can see your data. The advantage of that is that if you're traveling, you're at a different location, you can still see the information, whereas you can't see your physical filing cabinet that's locked away in head office. The other smaller detail, but again very powerful, is when you upload a file, it automatically pops it into a folder according to the tab that you uploaded it against. And this links back to my point around being able to have as much flexibility on user permissions as you require. So it could be that you would like managers to have access to their appraisal folder. It could be that you'd like employees themselves to have access to their contract folder. But the key is you will decide as a client how you have access across your organisation to the various fields on the screens, but also the documents attached. The second button is the Letters, and Letters is effectively mail-merge technology. The principle here being the number of documents that are produced by a HR department that typically start in a template fashion, but then find themselves onto a central drive, opened up in Word, and then all of the information is typed in. So any letter, regardless of whether it's a contract of employment, an offer of employment, or just a letter relating to a salary increase, all tends to have an employee's name, their address, the date on it, an address, so Dear Stephen, for example. All of those sorts of things will be typed into a Word document every time. The principle here is that you can have as many templates as you like. If there are regular documents that you are preparing, whether it be offer letters, contracts, salary increase letters, return to work from absences, whatever you may be storing, you can upload the template with the help of the consultancy team, upload the templates into the system. Once you've filled the information into the employee's record, you can just create a document. So in this case, I'm going to go to perm contract. It's actually a combination of an offer letter and a contract. My system will open up Word, will populate all the information that's been stored against the employee's record, the name of the organisation, the name and the address of the employee, their job title, where they're going to be working, and then as you scroll down, it becomes their full contract of employment. So again, the principle being here is that once the effort has been taken to upload the templates, then forevermore that task can be made much more efficient, because rather than have to enter the information onto a Word document, then enter it into a system later on, possibly a spreadsheet, then forward that information to the payroll team, or the however many numbers of people need to be told the same information, the principle will be enter it once and all of the other processes run off of that. And we'll talk a little bit about payroll integration later, because it's another key. So you'll be grateful that I won't necessarily go through as much detail on all of the other tabs within the system as I have now. I've explained the structure of the system, because they all typically work the same. I'll draw out some highlights, but effectively we have fields, we have date fields, we have drop-down fields, we have an effective date, and on each tab we have the ability to assign documents and to produce documents from the Actions button. As we then move through the other tabs, contact details, emergency contacts, I will touch upon later on when we look at employee self-service, because that is one area where employees can update their own details. Then we have work permit, equality and dependence stored on the personal tab. As we move to more of the HR data within the contract tab, this is where we'll store things like job titles, grades, and the other benefit that we get from a system that you don't necessarily get with spreadsheets is a reason. A very simple field there, but the reason, again, because it's a drop-down field, you include the values that are pertinent to your organisation. But the key is there, when you look back at history, I didn't show it on the address tab, but I mentioned that you can look at the history of all of the different fields. And in here, if my data was a little bit better in my demo, I would be able to see that the employee joined in 2008 here, and as they had increases throughout the years, I would be able to see the reason. I could look at the data and see the reason. In my example, they had a job change at some point, and they also had a lot of fluctuations on their hours per week using the demonstration data. But the principle there is, at a touch of a button, clicking the grid button, if I really wanted to, I could then export it to Excel. All of the reporting, and we'll touch upon reporting a little bit later, anything that you see on the screen, you will just be able to export into Excel and have that information to provide to a line manager to print out, to take into your meeting as you need. Some of the fields self-populate. For example, the probation end date comes off of the back of the start date plus the probation period, and again is another one that we would strongly recommend you use the email alert functionality. The email alert functionality could send 2 emails. It could send an email to the line manager a month before probation, and then to HR maybe 3 weeks before the probation, just to make sure that the right things have been put in place. And clearly there could be copied addresses in there as well. So it could be, for example, that all probations don't go to the whole HR team, one person looks into that, and you can direct those emails into whichever direction you choose. Organisation is another important tab. I mentioned the 5 different unit fields for how you will structure your organisation. In addition to this, we need an approver. So the approver, when we come to online holiday bookings, which again is one of the biggest time savers by implementing a system, is putting the responsibility for managing absence back to the employees and the manager. But popping an approver in there will mean that we can use the full absence management functionality, and everybody requires an email address. So again, this is how we're building up that hierarchy of an organisation, all of these fields are useful for reporting. If you want your headcount reports, or you want to start looking at your absence trends, or you want to look at your payroll costs, whatever you might be looking for, those 5 organisational fields help you really drill down into your data. And let's face it, we hear about big data and the and how to use data in business on an hourly, if not daily basis currently. Some fields like additional for things like membership numbers of professional bodies, references, recruitment, and the costing module to be able to split for the payroll costs if people are in multi-cost centres are all stored on those tabs. Then we come to pay. We have the pay fields for the salary, any additional rates of pay, a payroll field where you can fill in the various payroll company details, if it's internationally flexible, so you would see some different fields using for the employees based in Ireland, or if you operate in any other countries, then it will take the field set comes from the employee. So we have employers who are operating in more than one country. They would have different fields for one employee than they would for the other employee. Similar with the bank account details, you would need BIC and IBAN for employees who are operating and being paid in Ireland. You won't maybe for a UK employee, and you might need different fields if you had employees operating in other countries. What you get in an HR system that you don't always get in payroll systems on some of these tabs is the ability to add a narrative. So on the bonus tab here, I can put my date in, I can put my amount of money in, and that's about as far as it goes with a payroll system. But within a HR system, we can put the narratives there. So as well as attaching an email, so if the email comes from a line manager to say, please pay Katie a bonus on a particular day or a profit share, I can attach the actual email. I can attach a letter if the letter was written to the employee, but I could also just put some narrative in that the profit share is in relation to meeting 75% of the Q2 bonus or target, or whatever the case may be. Just means that you've got something to come back to when somebody queries it in the future, as opposed to trawling through emails. Regular benefits, regular allowances. So these can have start and end dates. So if you know something's going to end in December, you can pop it on with an end date of December now. You don't need to remember to do that in December. Again, a lot of the things that we're doing here, and I didn't point out earlier on, but when I talked on the address page and I talked about effective dates and many pages having an effective date, the key with the system is its point in time. If I change someone's department from October, then they'll stay in their current department until October. I log in on the 1st of October, only then will they be changed in the department. So you don't have to store things up in carried forward folders that suddenly get piled under another folder and we forget to put things on. It can all be put in as soon as it's available. Moving on to absence, I mentioned absence is one of the biggest time savings in the system, and that's effectively because you're able to allocate the responsibility for managing it back to employees and to managers, rather than everything come in centrally. I mean, we've done a bit of analysis with our customer base once, and we worked out that each employee has around 15 to 20 absences per year. Absences under this part of the system, we mean holidays, we mean sickness, we mean study leave, we mean any reason why they're not in work on a given day. So the reason why the number's higher than maybe you would expect is because people don't often take their 20 days holiday a year or 25 days holiday a year in nice, neat 2 and 1 week blocks. They take a half day here, they take a couple of days here, a long weekend there, and people get very, obviously managing their own social lives, they will have lots of different absences. So even an organisation with as little as 25 employees are likely to have 500 entries come in per year, 25, lots of 20, and are typed in centrally to a system, to a spreadsheet, however it's currently managed around absence, where putting all of this into the employee's hands when they're about to book a holiday, they're looking at a website, talking with their friends at a weekend to go to a concert or to go onto a mini break, and rather than have to say, oh, I'll check on Monday who's in, who's not in on that given day, they can just check the calendar. They can see who's in, they can do their planning and give the responsibility and the authority back to themselves in many ways. I'll talk about self-service a little bit in a minute and show you the portal, but there are three main areas of absence. There's the events, when was somebody off, and the full breakdown. All the rules are set in the background around each client's rules around sickness. Is it paid? Do they have an entitlement of half pay? That's what these reduced pay boxes here, reduced pay 1 maybe half pay, reduced pay 2 maybe quarter pay, and no pay would then fall back to whatever the statutory minimums are. But the point will be, for any type of absence, whether it be holiday, parental, sickness, it will just tell you whether it's being paid at what rate here. The next part of absence is the work plan. So to be able to run entitlements, we need to know when somebody was due to work. So are they a 5-day-a-week person? Are they a 3-day-a-week person? Do they work 8 hours on a Monday, 3 hours on a Wednesday? That's all configurable. You set that up by person, and the system knows when somebody's due to work. You then have the public holiday plan. So in this example, it's England and Wales, but this could be whatever the entitlement is, whether it's state specific, whether in some countries the country might have multiple bank holiday rules. But the point being is that the system then knows what days the employees are due to work. What's a public holiday? What days are non-working day? So if you book a holiday that covers Friday to Monday and the bank holidays on a Monday, it will only take 1 day off of your holiday entitlement. So it's all configurable according to your rules. That brings us to entitlements. The entitlements can have no end of rules. You can have as many entitlements as you like. So if managers get one set of rules, shop staff, for an example, if you're in retail, they got another set of rules. They could all be set up, and so can length of service. So the system would automatically handle the organisations that give another day after a year's service or 2 years service or whatever the case may be. It's all handled. Once the employee is set to a band table, it will do the rest for you. I'll come back to absence momentarily when we look at the self-service portal. Before that, I'm just going to finish off the employee record. The development tab, including training, is another very useful one. The training can be as simple as just recording on this tab who has some training that somebody has filled in, has completed a particular course on a particular date, and the result was X. That can be completed. Or it can be as far as you can book on the training module, you can put requirements of particular courses that anyone with a particular job title must have attended. So then you can do a full training needs analysis on everybody who is working in finance must have completed the Excel course. Everyone who's working in customer care must have completed the customer care course. And then the system will let you go the whole way into actually arranging a particular course, who's going to present the course, where it's going to be, and then you can book employees onto it according to their job title and what their requirements are, and then it will send them the joining notes. The trainer will be able to mark them as attended. They'll be able to do an evaluation, a needs requirement. They'll be able to do the whole thing and take the employees through to take the training through to the record to say whether they're compliant with you or not. So again, that's a useful tool. And with any of these areas, on a webinar for half an hour, we can only go into a certain amount of detail. I'm sure Catherine will say at the end, we're more than happy to arrange individual demonstrations to go into the detail if any of you would like to. Also on the development tab is the certificates, and this is where I referred to earlier on as the expiry date, another one that's very useful for the email alerts to tell you when something's about to expire. And we can record details of appraisals. Hopefully you don't have too many disciplinaries and grievances, but they can all be stored here. And these fields, what we're really doing in these fields is storing the header information, the date, the type of grievance, who chaired it, and then the review dates so that you don't forget any of the future actions. The main body of the grievance are going to form parts of notes. They could even be recordings if you've agreed with the employee that you're going to record or you're going to transcribe the conversations, and they're all going to be attached to the attachments button. So really here all we're doing is putting the notes here so that we can run reports, and then we're popping some things on the attachments button. Languages can be quite useful depending on your industry in terms of recording which employees speak or read each language. And then you've got the ability to store car information, equipment, and some that don't have an itinerary log about who's got laptops, mobile phones, find that quite useful. Pension details, whether it be on a percentage or a cash basis, and then expression of wish for anybody who has death in service benefits, and an accident log is also available. So just before I move on to the self-service portal, it's always just useful, if you're going to spend the time putting all this information into a system, it's useful to have the comfort that it's very easy to get the information back out. So I'm just going to spend a minute or two running a couple of variations of the same report. I'm just going to decide that I want to run a report of everybody's addresses. So I'm just going to call it Steve 0509 address. And setting up a report like that, I've given it a name. I can delete it once I've finished with it. I can put it into one of the folders once I've finished with it, or sorry, if I'm going to use it on a regular basis, or I can rename it and I can tweak it and all of the sorts of things. But the main principle of a report is to click the add field, and you will see that every field within the system is reportable. So there's no limits on what you can report on, but I'm literally just going to select staff number. I'm going to select the name, personal surname, personal first name, and I'm going to select all my address fields, 1, 2, 3, 4, and postcode. I'm going to say I only want the current employees, and I'm going to say I only want the current data. And what that means is that I showed you earlier on that one employee had 7 addresses. If I don't click current data, it will give me every address the employee's ever had. Sometimes that will be useful. If I want to know every salary that somebody's had or every absence, that would be useful, but certainly not for addresses. And clicking Run Report, and then clicking the Excel button just demonstrates how long it would take you to get a report out. This organisation's got, I was about to say about 100 employees, it's got 91 employees, and that's how I get all of the addresses out. So it was seconds to get to a report. The chances are you're likely going to want to have some criteria on a report. So again, without running too many, I will just show that you might, for example, want to put criteria on a report that says, I want everybody who's in organisation or department I'll do contains, and I'll just put the number 2. We know that Katie Ling is in a department called Department 2. So running that report will give me a much reduced set, and it's just the 3 people who are in Department 2. Jack Holt, Katie Ling, and Gillian Macy. And they're my people in Department 2. What I could do is, if I'm going to run a report and I'm going to need it reasonably regularly, not that you would do with addresses, but you might do for things like absences between 2 dates, I might set the criteria to be prompt criteria. What that means is I don't need to type it into my criteria and change it every time. I'll remind myself what it's going to ask me for. And when I update that, that report will never need to be changed. Every time I run it, I can just, it will ask me which department I want to run it for. Any reports can be scheduled. So if you know that you need to run a report, you're going to spend that time running it and you want it to be sent somewhere on a regular basis, then you can go to report schedule. You can select the report and you can say which day you want it to go to, which time, and who you want it to send it to. And that report will just send. So on the 31st of every month, you want a headcount report, or you want a absences between 2 dates report, then you can just fill that in and it will just send that to the report. If you wanted it to go to different department heads with different criteria on it, then you would just set the criteria in here. So you would set, for example, I want a particular report, my department one, for example, my Steve address 0509, I would say, well, I want it to go on the 30th, I'll do 27th of every month, and I want it to go end of the day I'd type an email address in, and then I would say, well, that report for that particular manager is only for Department 2, and then I might set another line up to say, well, I want it to go the same day, same time to a different manager for Department 12, but the rest of the departments might not like that report, so I don't need to send it to them. So again, you can just build all that up, and again, all we're trying to do is build efficiency. So I'm just going to spend a minute or so more on the employee self-service page, and then I will hand you back to Catherine. On the so the login page for the employee self-service, it looks slightly different. It's more RSM-ified. We are working on a rebrand. The admin portal will look different over time. We're constantly developing the software. That's another benefit of it. When you're buying a cloud solution, it means you're always on the most up-to-date version. If over time we add things and we improve it, you never get us coming along and saying, oh, we would like you to pay more money for it. So I'll just type my login. And so self-service, main things here are any documents that are global, and by global I mean based on that unit structure we mentioned before. So if you had a handbook, a dress code, an expenses policy, whatever your policies may be, and if they're related to a particular division, then you could store all the documents here and they can link straight through to them. This is an employee, this is a manager. So the manager has some requests to approve. So David Creswell reports to me and I'm James. So this will tell me that David has requested some holiday and he's put some sickness in, so I need to improve them. And it also means that managers can book holiday themselves every now and then. So the manager also has a request for a holiday here. Whenever they're looking at things like holiday, they can click the calendar, and this will only show 2 people, but it will just show them September, and it will show them when somebody's already off, when they're due to be in, and those sorts of things. So again, they've got that availability. Everything on this self-service portal, by the way, is available via mobile devices. So mobiles, tablets, they're optimized so people can log in via their iPhone or their Android device and they can book a holiday and view a pay slip, etc. My HR then would let them update their own personal details, their address details. Doesn't let them update their own salary details. I haven't quite got that far yet with employees, but they can update their own bank details, view their pay slips, check their absence record, how many days holiday have I got left. They can just have a look and remind themselves of what they've already booked, sickness records, and they can update their own emergency contact details. And that is the high-level half-an-hour demo. I'll probably use an extra minute or so, but I will hand you back to Catherine.
Thanks very much, Steve. Excellent, I must say. A very good and thorough demonstration of the RSM PeopleLog, and great to have you demonstrating it, you that's been so involved in its development and ongoing development. One of the questions, and thanks to all our listeners on the webinar, one question that's coming through here, there's a theme through all the questions, but one in particular it strikes me is, we're an organisation with 30 staff members. We have fairly good manual HR systems. A worry we have is about the implementation and what it would take, and is it more trouble than it's worth, basically. So can you give that listener any advice or as to how the PeopleLog would work in this circumstance for them?
Yeah, absolutely, and every client's implementation will vary, and really the key differentiator will be what they currently have. So if they do have processes in place, there will always be 3 stages to an implementation. The first is specification, and that specification takes the form of a meeting to work out with the client all of the options I've just mentioned, how they will be implemented, but then also to discuss what they've already got, because clearly for a system to work, there's going to be a having to pull a load of data together or pull the various data together. So that all requires to be put into spreadsheets. We can assist with that. We can we're not afraid to get our hands dirty and help with pulling that data together. But once all the data's in one place, then it gets imported into the system very easily. And the other key benefit with our implementation is that we then train the client on their populated system. So never will we implement a system which is blank and then they'll have to type it all in for them. We will work to get their data, to populate it to the system, and then train them on their live data.
So for the price that I mentioned at the beginning of the seminar, the from €3,000 setup, initial setup, once-off setup, all the data, and we work with the client in terms of getting all that onto the system.
Correct. So that includes the initial meeting to specify what data will be required, and then the production of the spreadsheets. So the blank spreadsheet template we provide to the client. The client then will pull all of that data together and pass it back. Included in that implementation fee is us then getting all that data into the system and configuring the system as per the original questionnaire. And then there will be a half a day on-site training to show the client how to use that system with their data already in it.
And another question I just see coming up here is there an annual cost associated with this over and beyond the per employee, the €4 per employee? Is there an annual cost?
Yeah, good question, and I'm glad to say the answer is no. The per employee is all-encompassing. So the per record cost includes everything that will be paid after the setup. Once the setup's been happened, that one-off cost is paid. Then the fees are very transparent, just based on the number of employees at any given time.
One question coming through: can we load historical information?
Yeah, and the answer to that one comes back to the one around the main implementation. As we'll be providing templates for data, there's no restriction in how much data can be provided in those. So although there may only be 30 employees, if you want to go back 5 years of salary history or further, then each line within the spreadsheet that will be provided will have an effective date on it. It'll have a unique identifier, so at the staff number, and absolutely, that's a long way of saying yes. Okay,
thank you very much. Support. What support is available, and does it cost much?
There's really two things around support. There's the support around how do you use the system, and that will be a telephone advice line and stroke email line, UK business hours, so any queries are handled. To be honest, there aren't many queries because the system you would have seen is quite intuitive and self-explanatory. So users typically are more than comfortable with using their system. When they do have queries around it, it might be around, oh, I'm running a report, which field should I best use for this, or which field should I best use for this? The other area of support that a client might require, I would say, links more back to the HR team that you've got sat in Dublin. So in terms of if a client during implementation or further down the line has queries around how does their holiday, what are the holiday rules, which sickness rules should we be applying in the system to pay our employees, and they would come directly to the team in Dublin, and as you know, you're always at the end of the phone.
Okay, well, thank you very much. In terms of the payroll, a question here: how does the standard payroll report export, the one that you export to Excel, what does it look like?
Yeah, so two payroll options. If the payroll is being run by RSM, it's more of a straight-through link. So the team in Dublin, and I always push this one out there. There are a growing number of countries that we've worked with the in-house team to ensure that the RSM local provider on the ground just receives the data, runs the payroll, and it's all quite seamless. But the question specifically relating to the Excel format for other providers, well, the key is in there. It will be Excel or CSV, and just as I was just showing in the report writer, the order of the fields is as per the client's requirements, or should I more accurately, it's as per the third-party payroll provider's requirements. They will typically say we need the data in this format. All we can say is we can provide all of that data in any Excel CSV format is required based on the user-defined reporting, and then it's the third party's role to map that and import it into the payroll.
Very good. And just one more question I think that we've time for before we wrap up, and it's a practical question, I suppose, looking to learn from your experience. Can you give us an example of a client that this system has worked well for, and why?
Yeah, well, there are a number of them. So if I just sort of standardise the response, the client that it works, or should I say, gets the best bang for buck immediately, is the client who is using spreadsheets at best for absence management, for example. So they've got a number of employees that's enough to become not a problem, but it's frequent questions and frequent administration. So as I say, 20 holidays per year or whatever, to update that centrally, keep receiving an email. Not a day goes by when an employee isn't saying, can you update my address? I need to book a holiday. It's not just the booking of the holiday and approving them and updating them onto a spreadsheet, it's all the associated queries as well. So it's the managers asking, how many days holiday does somebody have left? It's the employees themselves saying, how many days have I got left, or how many sickness days have I still got to be paid? So it's that type of client who doesn't have someone specifically in place to do a HR role. They're effectively an office manager, or they're an administrative assistant to the owner of a business, or the MD of a business, and they're doing all of this on top of their day job. So what we're really trying to do is save them a few hours per month, or hopefully a little bit more than that, but they're saving some hours per month to focus on their day job, as opposed to dealing with the constant administration, which doesn't really stop around in this space. It's just continuous. On any given day, the holiday request, the changes to personal details, and that's before you get to the ones that are the managers increasing people's pay, or changing terms and conditions, and the normal hiring process.
Okay, well, very interesting. Well, it sounds like it saves a lot of time, and it allows your HR manager, your people managers, answer questions and use data effectively, and really get on with probably dealing with more strategic matters. Well, thank you very much, Steve. You've been very good to bring us through all of that. I suppose any further questions from any of our listeners or future listeners, or if you have any questions, you can contact myself, Catherine Corcoran, and you'll see my email address there, or my colleague, Ciara Kiley, management consultant here in RSM Ireland as well. And Steve is at our back with all the very well and well-tested system, and thank you so much for demonstrating that to us.